How do you do? Good. Usually I am prepared for my presentations, but this morning I do not feel so prepared because I've been working so hard. I was up at 7 o'clock this morning, I was on the radio, and I was engaged with a large audience, and my younger brother said that I should break down fractals when I speak about fractals. And so I hope that I can break down my presentation. Let me thank my sister. Thank you so much for that introduction. I want to thank Professor, the acting director, interim director of the Africa Institute for inviting me once more to participate with you in discussing some of the burning issues for us in Africa. And by us in Africa, I mean the wider Pan-African world of which we form a part. I've been here for the past 2 days, and I've been working with the concerned Africans, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. They worked me hard, but my sister Miranda reminded me of the days when we were working for the liberation of Africa. In those days, when we worked in Dar es Salaam, at the University of Dar es Salaam, we worked from the Dar es Salaam school, we had a certain kind of precision about the times that we were going to be at a certain place, what we were going to do at a certain place, and who we were going to speak to. And I think that when I've been going with her from Pretoria to Johannesburg and going to the different sessions, she reminded me of the capacity of the leadership of women to carry forward the question of the liberation of Africa. So I want to thank you for the kind of engagement we've had for the past 2 days. My brother Chris Landsberg was very gracious in the discussions we had at the University of Johannesburg 2 days yesterday. The last time I was at the Africa Institute, Solani, where is he? Stand up, please. Because let's give him a round of applause. I was here to speak about my book, Barack Obama and 21st Century Politics, a revolutionary moment in the United States of America. I was speaking about my book because my book was not about Obama. My book is about the revolutionary moment. Because I said Obama is not a revolutionary, but he's caught in a revolutionary moment. A revolutionary moment is that moment in society where the ideas and forms of organizations that hitherto held society together can no longer hold society together. And when I was giving that presentation, Solani and I, we were in a discussion about what was going on in Libya. And I was writing a number of articles. And in that meeting, my very close friend and brother, Ambassador Ali Alime, and now Ali is no longer with us. Ambassador Ali Alime, who we have been together in Dar es Salaam. Ambassador Alime was the ambassador of Palestine to South Africa and Southern Africa. Ambassador Alime and I, we worked together in Dar es Salaam. We worked together in Zimbabwe, but I never lived in South Africa when he was here. But we had a very close relationship. And when I was speaking very passionately about Assad of Syria, Alime said to me, Horace, my brother, you may be against Assad, but you must be very careful that your opposition to Assad does not put you in the same camp as the jihadists who are being supported by the West. And Ambassador Alime took me to breakfast with the ambassador of Syria. And that morning, we sat down for 3 hours and discussed, I discussed Syria. And I'm very happy that I had that discussion with Ambassador Alime because it forced me to develop the sophistication that I was developing with respect to Libya. The sophistication I was developing with respect to Libya was that although I opposed Gaddafi, I opposed even more the NATO intervention in Gaddafi. And I believe that the NATO intervention in Libya was a major blow for the peoples of Africa. And it set back Africa. And I wrote catastrophic failure in order for us to learn the lessons. And I want to thank the Africa Institute for working with me to getting this book out at a moment that it can be part of the discussion about where we're going and how we're going to transform and free Africa. So I'm hoping that this morning we will be able to have a discussion about the questions of peace and reconstruction in Africa. I come here with 4 different hats. I'm wearing 4 different hats. I was introduced as a professor of Syracuse University. That I am. That I am. I work and I earn my living at one of the foremost institutions in the United States of America. And that institution is the Maxwell School of Citizenship of Syracuse University. An excellent institution, and I invite you to send your children and join us because you will get different teaching here. You have people teaching from different white perspectives. And it's part of the democratic struggles in the United States that I teach in Syracuse University. My dean of Maxwell School was a former assistant secretary of state. Horace Campbell doesn't agree with him. But the fact that we work in the same institution is part of the democratic rights that the peoples of the United States have struggled for. And I speak in that tradition. I speak also from the position of being a member of the peace movement. Syracuse Peace Council is the oldest peace organization in the United States of America. So I speak wearing that hat also. Because we in the peace movement, we are very clear that the militarization of the world will not help humanity. I speak also as a member of the Rastafari. My first book, as you introduced, is Rasta and Resistance. Last week at the same time, I was in Jamaica at a conference on the Rastafari Assembly. And it was such a wonderful occasion because 3 different generations of Rastafari were here. Bob Marley's granddaughter was there. And the last closing ceremony, Bonnie Wheeler, some of you know who he is. He sang a song about Babylon, your throne gone down, and he led the singing. So the intelligentsia, the different views of the Rastafari movement was on display on this Rastafari Assembly. My coming to Pan-Africanism came from growing up among the Rastafari who taught us about the fact that the liberation of Africa is linked up with the liberation of other African peoples. So my 4th hat that I come to you with is my hat as a member of the Global Pan-African Movement. As a member of the Global Pan-African Movement, we are involved at the crossroads of how Africa is going to be the ground for the transformation of the planet Earth, and why Africa and Africans hold the key for breaking the old conceptions about hierarchy of human beings. And so it is with those 4 traditions that I want to address you today about the world and Africa. Solani chose this topic, and I don't know why he chose this topic, but because that's a very difficult topic to deal with the whole world. So I want to probably focus on 2 parts of that world. The parts Europe and Africa, because it is the parts of the world that are now in contestation about where we go. Where are we going at the present moment? In my presentation, I hope to take you through a discussion of what we mean by global NATO. I hope to take you through some of the challenges of the manipulation of the United Nations, or what they call responsibility to protect, and the role of Wall Street in the debacle in Libya, the execution of Gaddafi and the humiliation of Gaddafi, and the question of the future of African unity. The subtitle of this book, is Lessons for Africa in the Forging of African Unity. And I will say some more about the lessons in the conclusion. So I hope you will bear with me about where we are and where we're going. So what is the world we're living in? The world and Africa. Some of you know that's a very important book that was written by W.B. Du Bois. W.B. Du Bois wrote a book called The World and Africa. Because after World War II, we had to have a summation of where were the African people in the world today. Where were the African people in the world today? I can say with confidence that at this moment, in the midst of the worst capitalist depression since 1930, Africa is the place of the promise, and Africa is the place of the fastest growing economies, and the African youth are on the threshold of transforming the whole world. And in that process of transformation, which we celebrated in Addis Ababa in May 25th, when we celebrated 50 years of the struggles of African unity, and we discussed how it is we're going to harness the knowledge, the skills, the ideas, and new forms of organization to transform Africa, to make it a place where Sheikh Anta Diop said that we can make Africa a paradise on earth. How can we turn the rich resources of Africa? That is the question of the world and Africa today. Well, what are we going through in the world? We're going through in the world a major capitalist crisis. What is a major capitalist crisis? The major capitalist crisis is where the former method of accumulating wealth on earth, based on private accumulation of wealth, based on financial speculation, based on the domination and exploitation of human beings, we're at the crossroads of how do we move out of that form of organization. And at every moment in history, we have come to a point where ideas confront themselves. The old ideas of hierarchy, the old ideas of supremacy and inferiority, the old ideas of military power and military management of the world economy, the old ideas about Africans being a place of savagery and barbarism, those ideas are confronted now with the ideas of how can we have the space on the planet Earth for the replenishing of the planet, for Africans to be celebrated, and for us to rise above all kinds of divisions. That is the world in Africa. That is the world in Africa in 2013. Now, if you look at the world in Africa from the point of view of corporate investors, everyone is now looking at Africa as the space for investment. And we have many suitors in Africa today. The African Union will be announcing every week that they're having a meeting with Japan, and Japan will have African Summit. They'll have a meeting about Brazil, and the Brazilians will want to have a meeting about their relationship with Africa. Then the Russians will want to have a meeting. And then the Germans and the European Union will want to have a meeting. And then the Chinese are most engaged. And we now know that China is emerging as a dominant influential force in world economy. And so the traditional exploiters of Africa now are faced with the fact that Africans have a choice.